Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this conference on additive manufacturing. I'm Fabian Zulik. I'm the Chief Executive and Chief Economist of the European Policy Center, an independent Brussels-based think tank, and it's my pleasure to moderate this event. I think clearly looking at new technologies, looking at where Europe is, where our competitiveness is very important in the current environment. We need to make sure that Europe stays at the cutting edge of new technologies and that we can deliver the jobs and growth which also come with these developments. I think we also need to look at what we can do at the European level to encourage the development of new technologies, to make sure that the benefits of these technologies are also felt in Europe and not elsewhere. So this is an important conference within that context. And we will hear both from policymakers and from the industry itself. If you have any questions or comments, we have a Q&A facility within Zoom where you can write down your questions, and I will try to then pick them up. Please, if you have questions, firstly, tell us who you want to address them to, and secondly, please keep them very, very short. It's very difficult on Zoom if they are very long questions to then pick them up. But without further ado, I will introduce the speakers as we go along, and we will start firstly with Susana Solis Perez from Renew Europe. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yeah, good morning, everyone. And first of all, I am very happy to be once again co-hosting this additive manufacturing conference, although this year in a virtual format and not in the parliament. And it is hard to believe how much and how dramatically the world has changed since we last met last year in the parliament. I remember telling you 1 year ago that as a member of the ITRE committee, as being an engineer myself, one of my priority areas of work here in the parliament is working towards a new and resilient industrial strategy that ensures the competitiveness of our economy and jobs of high quality. And COVID-19 has further evidenced the weaknesses in our supply chains, as well as the urgency now more than ever to strengthen our industry as well as our strategic autonomy. This must be the pillar of our economic recovery. And that is why it is imperative to review the industrial strategy that the European Commission published in March 2020, as it did not take into account neither the depth of the damage inflicted to the industrial sector and SMEs, nor the next generation recovery plan that it is about to be approved. That is why the European Parliament asked the Commission last week to develop a new industrial strategy with two phases. A first, short-term phase that focuses on recovery and that helps companies overcome the crisis, reactivate production and save jobs. And a second, which is a transformation phase, which increases competitiveness, reduces our dependence on third countries, and is the engine of the twin digital and green transition. And without doubt, additive manufacturing has to have a fundamental role in this transformation due to its potential to ensure a more resilient and competitive manufacturing industry for Europe, which is at the same time efficient and sustainable. And additive manufacturing has played an essential role during the pandemic with the production of medical equipment devices and protective equipment, and it has put this sector under the spotlight. The benefits of additive manufacturing are clear to all of us, not only the health sector, but also for car manufacturers, construction, energy, and aerospace. It can optimize the design and production process. It can reduce manufacturing cost and waste production, and increase the speed and time to market of new products producing on-demand solutions. And companies that adopt this technology in the first place will be much more competitive. That's why, as policymakers, we have to ensure that the adequate conditions are there for this technology to spread and integrate to many other sectors, making the leap from its use in prototypes to its incorporation in mass production. And that means that we need to work together, industry and all the stakeholders, in order to break down the barriers for additive manufacturing to grow and make its adoption a simple step for the manufacturing industry. I think there are various factors, but I would like to highlight three, which I believe they could contribute to unleash all the potential of this sector. First, we need to invest in research and innovation in order to continue lowering costs and investigate new materials and further applications. Second, of course, we need to address the skilled worker shortage in the sector. And third, develop adequate legislation avoiding over-regulations. Regarding the innovation, it's clear that Europe cannot cope with the the green and digital transitions without unprecedented investments in innovation and technology. That's why the Parliament has fought to increase the budget of Horizon Europe within the next MFF up to the challenge and ambitions we face. But not only Horizon Europe, we also have the Digital Europe program and the Next Generation funds. And also, as a member of the Regi Committee, of the Regional Committee, I would like also to highlight the importance of the structural funds. And I am aware of many research projects financed with these funds, and the need to achieve better synergies between European, national, and regional funds. We need also measures to promote private investments, as well as public-private partnerships in order to cover the extensive supply chains of this technology, and promote a cooperation between research centers, associations, universities, and companies, because only in this way we can successfully transfer the knowledge to the productive sector and society. And we need, second, we need skills. We need qualified people. One of the main obstacles to develop IM is its lack of a specialized workforce. Workers who are able to work with the full process from design to final parts in the different sectors. And in order to overcome this gap in skills, companies, governments, institutions, and citizens are required to work together to make investments in educational and job training systems, upskilling, reskilling, and also, as you mentioned many times, to anticipate future skill needs and redesign professional profiles according to the industry needs. And finally, legislation. As I mentioned at the very beginning, we need a regulatory framework that stimulates innovation and sector development. We have to promote the conditions for Europe to become the market leader in this sector. And I personally think we must also avoid overloading the sector with unnecessary regulation. And for this, we need to have continuous dialogue with the industry, like this meeting today, where we can debate together the upcoming legislation and concerns. And finally, I would like to thank our host, Setimo, for counting on me once again to participate and curate this exchange of views, which are very necessary. And please feel free to voice your concerns, your priorities, because it's important for us as policymakers to know them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I need to unmute myself, we might come back to some of those points in some questions afterwards, but I'll hand over to our next MEP speaker now, Michael Bloss from the Greens. If you could give your perspective, please.
Thank you very much, Susana. Thank you very much, Fabian, for also the invitation. So as it was said, we are in a time of a big crisis, and in times of big crisis, we have seen in Europe that the manufacturing sector, the industry, is actually the backbone of our economy. It is the the sector of the industry that can rebalance the crisis, that is stabilizing and that is less crisis prone. And I think it's a big value add to Europe and to the European economy that we are strong in the manufacturing sector, in the industry sector. We have these good jobs, and we have this stability through this sector. So this is an absolute asset, and I think we have to understand in Europe that therefore it is important to preserve this these jobs, to support the sector, because it will also in the future create this stability and this good jobs. So focus on the strength in times of crisis is, I think, the one leading idea that should bring us through this crisis. And there, your sector, manufacturing, has to play an important job. And we as European policymakers have to understand that what kind of gift we have since historical times, and this should not be given away easily. Even though I think that, this is not something that we can just take for granted. No, we have a lot of transformations, we have a lot of innovation, we have fierce competition, international competition about innovations. And I think here it is important that we in Europe understand that we have to change the way we approach industrial policy. Before, there was always the idea that well, there should actually not be so much industrial policy in Europe because the markets will anyway solve it. Well, it's true, the industry is strong, the people are strong, the innovative strength in the sectors is strong, but still we are in international competition with economies like in China, where you have a lot of state-led intervention, there's a lot of state-led programs to support the sectors, and also you have a strategy and a plan to become leading in the most important technologies in the world within the next years. And I think this is the thing that we are up against, and so we in Europe have to really rethink the way we approach industrial policy and have an industrial strategy that can actually cope with this new international environment. And this is what the European industrial strategy has to deliver. We saw in the last industrial strategy published by the European Commission that it goes a little bit into this direction, but not really fully into this direction. And also it really prioritizes the digital transformation, and it does not really prioritize the strong sectors that we already have, which is the manufacturing sector. I think this is something that we have to really keep in mind. I was, as a member of the ITRE committee, also the shadow rapporteur for the industrial strategy from the Greens. And this is one aspect that I was bringing into our European Parliament's position, is to support this sector and to understand the value of this of the manufacturing industry, and to think about what kind of support we can give from the policy side in order to preserve and to help develop the sector and the companies. And we came to good conclusions and ideas. One thing that has been already said is, of course, the support of research. This is where we are strong. This is where we have basically our capital in Europe. Yeah, this is our strong minds. This is the engineers. This is the people who develop new technologies. So we have to support really with the research finance. Second is that we really have a European-wide regulatory framework, and not like 27 different kinds of regulations that will then make it difficult for also for the companies to develop and to access the whole European market. That is our strength. And third, we need to really think about what kind of targeted support can we give, especially because we are in front of this of the green transformation, the decarbonization. So if a sector can contribute to reducing CO2 emissions, which of course additive manufacturing can, then it is something that we as a society want. And so the question is, what kind of programs could it be in terms of, could it be, you know, like an IPCEI, or what kind of programs can we implement in order to support industries that are making a huge contribution to the green transformation? You might wonder, you know, this is like a Green Party member with interested in the manufacturing sector, the manufacturing industry. Why is that? Especially because I'm also fighting for like having high climate targets in the European Union. But I think these two things really have to go hand in hand. We have to support the green industrial revolution, the decarbonization revolution, and currently it's really a race. Yeah, we now have also with the election in the US a new competitor, and basically the question is now who is the first in the new decarbonized world? Who will be the ones that are developing the technology that are used in a world without greenhouse gas emissions? And I want Europe to be first in this world, in these markets, because these are the future markets. The Paris Agreement says that all of the world has to go carbon and climate neutral, not only Europe or the United States, but everyone. So everyone in the future will need products that are carbon neutral, and this is what we have to be supporting now. We have to be early in this. We should not wait any longer, and it's also something that creates jobs, and this is what we need in these times of crisis. So the green approach is keep this important manufacturing industrial jobs, decarbonize them, make it a success story, also a success story for being the first on the future markets. This goes hand in hand with decarbonizing our economy and being a front runner in climate policies. So there's a lot of ample opportunities in this. We have to take these opportunities. We have to reap the fruits of early investments, but what it means is early action. And I think what I would expect and hope is that when the new industrial strategy comes out, so the second version of it, then the strong assets of the European economy, which is the manufacturing sector, is mentioned more in this. There is more focus on how to support it, because it is what makes Europe strong, and I hope it will also make Europe strong in the future. But this is not decided yet. It depends on us, and it depends on early action. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now finally on the MEP panel, Christoph Kudler, also from Renew Europe.
Thank you very much. After my colleagues Susana and Michael, I will try to have some additive remarks, if I can say. As you may know, I am Vice Coordinator for Renew on the E3 committee at the European Parliament, and I also was a shadow rapporteur for my group on the report for a new industrial strategy, as Michael was too. The report was adopted during the last week's plenary session, and I think we managed to reach an ambitious and well-balanced text on this important topic. Now, the main challenges for us will be to make sure that the European Commission takes into account those propositions for the elaboration of the new industrial strategy. This will, of course, have impacts on every industrial sector, including for the additive manufacturing industry and for companies at every level of the value chain. Let me elaborate on this and on the most pressing issues for the sector through the future industrial strategy. First, Europe as a leader in additive manufacturing. I'm very happy to say that Europe is a leader in this sector with big players such as Airbus or Siemens, but also with a lot of SMEs. The European Patent Office recently conducted a study on additive manufacturing. This study shows that European companies are leading in innovation in the 3D printing sector. European countries alone account for 47% of all additive manufacturing inventions. This success is especially due to German performances, but also, for example, to Spain, Italy, and France. Why does Europe have to secure this leading position? I see several reasons. First, to secure our supply on European production. In the context of the sanitary crisis, we have seen more than ever that we have to secure the production of essential products at European level and reduce our dependency towards third countries. The 3D printing technologies offers potential, as we have seen with the COVID-19 crisis. But there is still room to develop it, for example, with the development of on-site printing to secure the production where it is needed. This means less transportation cost, but also direct availability of the products in the exact needed quantity. Secondly, we need this technology to meet our climate goals for 2050, especially with the Green Deal. It can help to build a more circular and efficient system. When you use this type of technology, you only use the exact amount of raw material you need. This means no waste in terms of raw materials, as well as a reduction of the energy used for the production. Finally, third remark, additive technologies will also help us to create high quality jobs. As we accelerate innovation and make those technologies more attractive and competitive, for more workers will also be needed. What is especially interesting with 3D printing is that it also creates jobs in small communities where 3D printing can be very useful to prototype or replace a missing piece. So now to finish, the real question is how do we do it? First, we need to make the sector more visible, more attractive for investors, for local industries, for workers. For me, it is crucial to secure a strong investment capacity, both from the public and the private sector. We also have to develop research and development, as well as innovation capacities. I think that Horizon Europe program will continue to play a role here after Horizon 2020. There is a lot of money in this program, and you have to be in it. We can't risk losing the race to innovation. I think it is important, finally, to pay attention to our SMEs in the sector. The 3D printing sector includes companies of all sizes playing their parts at different levels of the value chain. For the smaller ones at startup levels, we must give them the means to grow up and face the competition. This means a proper support for their digital transformation, for example. Indeed, it is also a way to encourage small companies to engage in 3D printing technologies and support its development in the new sectors where it's not mature yet. For example, clean energies, construction, or maybe biotechnology. This is, I think, how we can secure Europe's industrial leadership and go further. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all the speakers. We have a little bit of time left, so I'll come back with a question to each one of you. But I would ask you to be relatively short, maybe a minute and a half, so that we can try to keep to the timetable. I'll start in the same order as before with Susana. One question I would have is, when we look at the digital revolution, which we've already gone to, one of the issues we have had was the uptake of new technologies, that the new technologies became available, but they weren't necessarily diffused across sectors, across companies, also across SMEs. So what can policymakers do to encourage rollout and uptake of these new revolutions, which are now coming with artificial intelligence, with additive manufacturing, with all of the technological development we are seeing right at the moment?
Okay, and this is a very interesting question, because as Kudler said before, SMEs as the bone of our economy, and also of the industry, of the additive manufacturing industry, and we need to make sure that they uptake all the technologies. In special artificial intelligence, I am a member of the Special Artificial Intelligence Committee, and we need to make sure that SMEs have access, for example, to the data. We make data available for all of them, and for this we need to have this European data space. We need to. This is one of the priorities in order to increase our competitiveness and to be able to compete with US or with China. And we need to make sure that SMEs are able to uptake those technologies, giving access to the data, giving access to the funds. Above all, we need to make sure that in the middle of this industrial strategy, SMEs are there, and we make it easier in terms of regulation and in terms of reduced bureaucracy. So it is a mix of factors, but we need to make sure that the artificial intelligence, for example, is a human certain technology, but also that takes into account that we don't stifle innovation and that SMEs are able to uptake this technology.
Thanks very much. Michael, when you gave your short introductory remarks, you emphasized particularly the external dimension, the competition from countries like China. What about the internal dimension? And in particular, when we look at the single market, how do we need to develop the single market to encourage the development and the competitiveness of these technologies?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I said it's important to have common rules in Europe, a common regulatory framework. I think that's important. And then I think the other question is, of course, you know, what kind of fabric of the industry sector do we want to have? Do we want to support the SMEs? Do we want to have this internal European market and competition? Do we want to have this, you know, global players? And this is a little bit a policy choice. I believe that the current model we have with lots of SMEs that are highly innovative is actually something that makes Europe strong, with SMEs in competition, with that fosters innovation. So like not only focusing on, you know, the big ones, especially in this sector, but really supporting the current structure that we have is important. And we have, it's, as you said, like it's a little bit different in the industrial transformation process than if in the digital revolution, where you had like new companies coming out. Now you have a lot of actual existing companies that work very well, but they are going through this transformation themselves. So supporting them in assessing the knowledge, updating their own technology, being innovative is I think, the key thing that we have to do here.
Thank you very much. And Christophe, you mentioned that a lot of high quality jobs will be created in the sector. Now, whenever we have a policy discussion on new technologies, there are also a lot of fears that this could destroy jobs, that this could lead to a situation where jobs also go abroad. How can we address those concerns about the impact, in particular, on jobs in Europe?
Thank you very much, Fabian. As we say, we are in a transition. The most important for the industrial future of Europe is to succeed this transition. And this transition means that it will be finished for some jobs, and we will have now new jobs who will arrive, and we have to be ready in all the sector, because we are in a very generous Europe with our single market. But if we are not ready with new jobs and with new products inside Europe, what will happen is, as we have opened not only with a single market, but with a global market, if we are not ready with workers, with new jobs, people will arrive from all other parts of the world to make business in Europe, and it will be the end of some sectors. Maybe your sectors, if you are not enough in innovation and if you are not succeeding with the new workers, with a lot of training in this new in the new competencies. That's the reason why I think we have to think very well with the global market. You explained to Michael, it's very important, single market, of course, but let's think global market and have a fair competition, a nice level playing field with all the world, and not naive Europe, you know, and it will important to make business in this framework.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for your input from the policy side. I was pushing you a bit on some of these policy implications, because that's also something I want to ask the companies, what do they think policymakers need to offer, in particular European policymakers need to offer. So we're now turning to the company side. So if you can put on your cameras so we can see you as well. And we will start with Stuart Lane, who is the corporate manager at Renishaw PLC, as well as the chairman of the Additive Manufacturing Committee at Sesimo. So in a way, also representing the hosts of the conference.
Thank you very much, Fabian. Can you hear me? Can I just do a sound check? That's good news. Didn't go quite so well last time I did this. Thanks for your introduction, and thank you to the MEPs today for hosting us. It would have been nice to have been in Brussels to see you physically, but this is also a great opportunity to have a dialogue with you and talk about our AM community. So thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen with you now and just give you a short presentation about Sesimo and the background to my speech. I'll keep it short, I promise. There we go. Let's see. Can you see that? Hello. Can you see that, Fabian? Yep.
Sorry. No, I don't see it at the moment.
You don't see that? I'll try again. Let's try that one. How about that?
Yes.
Yes,
see that now. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just talk briefly about Sesimo. So Sesimo, first of all, I'd like to introduce Sesimo to you all. We are a umbrella organisation, a trade association, in fact, that's been going since the 1950s representing the common interests of the machine tool industries, wider manufacturing industries, and indeed the additive manufacturing industries at an EU and global level. And within that association, we represent about 350 AM companies across the value chain, so manufacturers of equipment, but also users of the equipment, powders, developments of software, and so on. So we're a very broad church, as we like to say. The main topics that we push in supporting this industry are the following, and it is our belief that by resolving issues surrounding these subjects that we will enable the AM community to further flourish and grow. So topics that we brief on are business barriers, and there's a lot of talk about regulation at the moment, funding, R&D through to production. Very pleased to see some of the work being done on Horizon funding. I'm sure we'll talk about R&D later. Intellectual property issues are obviously an emerging technology, and we need to see the benefits of our investment. Standardization certification is a very big topic for the industry at the moment, particularly in the more established industries like aerospace and automotive, medical, and as has already been covered by some of our speakers today, the training and skills gap in order to have the people to actually drive the technology and indeed use it. So if we look at what we've been doing as an industry body recently, and of course there's been a lot in the media spotlight regarding the role that AM played with respect to our medical response to COVID-19. Sesimo was at the forefront of some of the initiatives to try and use this technology in a means to combat the virus. So one exercise, an example of an exercise we carried out, was to actually give the details of over 200 worldwide AM companies to European officials, including our own membership, in order to support and in order to manufacture AM components to combat the disease. And I think we're going to hear more about that with one of our presenters later on. This gave us the opportunity to genuinely map the strengths and the size of the AM sector, the capability within Europe, and pass it on to our policymakers. That in itself revealed to us firsthand some of the challenges that the industry were facing, and further honed our advice and our direction with respect to policy. Some of the work that we did was through COVID was to ask that the AM sector be recognised as an essential value chain during the activities of lockdown. As we'll all remember, industry was shutting down, and we pushed for AM to stay open. And this led us to further develop a document, the summary of which you can see on this slide here below, which we felt could further boost the growth of our industry. Our action didn't stop there. We believe that recent supply chain disruption in the medical industry, for example, and our action against it could be used in other sectors, such as, for example, the energy sector, talking a lot about supply chain today. And so we've been hosting webinars with our membership, with policymakers, to look at what we did and see whether some of our learning and some of the takeaways aren't relevant to other industries. It resulted in a webinar in July, for example, where we discussed the opportunity to fill the gaps in traditional supply chains, something that we believe AM is very strong in doing. We looked at the role of AM as a complementary solution, and we were discussing the importance of regulatory framework to enable that use of AM in the future. And it's partly through that work that we wanted, and we're very pleased to be able to organise this event today, to look further at what we can do to grow our industry and support those industries to which we supply. I'm hoping that we've got some interesting industrial speakers for you. I look forward to seeing what they have to say, and I believe we'll be taking some questions after that as well. There'll be opportunities for that. So thank you very much. I'll hand you back to Fabian, and no doubt we speak to you soon.
Thank you very much for this introduction and also highlighting some of the recent developments where clearly additive manufacturing has played an important role. But I'm sure we'll also hear more of that from our industry representatives. So I'll start with Paul Hyden, who is Senior Vice President, Product Management at Ultimaker.
Good morning. Yes, still morning. What I would like to do today is dig a little bit deeper in the opportunities that 3D printing will give in the digitalized supply chain. I think the real promise of this industry. There, hang on. Does the sharing work? Sorry to interfere here.
I did see it, but now it's disappeared again.
Yeah. Okay. I'll keep it in this way. Hang on. So apparently the presentation mode doesn't work. So again, my name is Paul Hyden. I'm responsible for product at Ultimaker. I'll be finalizing my job at the end of this year. It has been 5 very hard, long years, but extremely successful, building Ultimaker into a world leader. What I will do is, first of all, give you a area that I feel that 3D printing in general is applicable. I'm always using this bell curve. It shows the life cycle of any part that you could possibly think of, whether it's a screw or a wheel or a car. You start with concept modeling and you end with the part being obsolete. And what we try to do here is explain where 3D printing will certainly have value. That's in functional prototyping, that's in the ramp up of production perhaps, in creating production tools, which is a very promising growing market at the moment, in customized products, and particularly in spare parts and obsolete parts. Now, if we look at adoption, the first phase that we always see is local manufacturing. So people will start building things at the place where it's needed and at the moment that it's actually needed. And the most wonderful example that I can think of and that I'm always using is that people would use a 3D printer on a ship. And actually the first relatively professional printer that we brought to market, literally the next day I went to the Navy in the Netherlands and said, I think that you need a printer on a ship just to repair things or build things at the moment that you need it, when you need it. It's a wonderful explanation of the capabilities of producing things locally, where it used to be that you need to build enormous factories to do it centrally. This is also the way that we helped in COVID, of course, particularly in France, but also in this case, Australia. Governments, particularly armies, have built enormous capacity to build locally all sorts of personal protection devices. Now, what is important is that the moment you're capable of 3D printing something, that's also the moment that you're capable of digitalizing your supply chain. I'm always using this little picture, but you could easily imagine that once you have the digital part, you're capable of sending parts to the local places where it's actually needed at the time that it's needed. And if there's one thing that would sincerely impact not just the competitive position of companies, which is of course always the best driver you could possibly think of, but also the impact that this will have on environment, the impact that this will have on material use. It's something that's so promising that I have no doubt that this will materialize very quickly in the forthcoming 5 to 10 years. Because just imagine what's currently happening. We're bringing huge quantities of materials, plastics, metals to factories, often somewhere perhaps in China, whereas we use the parts in Europe, or perhaps in Europe when we need the parts in the US. We build them on a massive scale, otherwise it's no use to make them. We can't make them against a lower price. Then we bring them to warehouses where they sit, and finally we bring them to the end user. So the overcapacity, the use of materials, the physical movements of all these parts is enormous, and it's for a part at least of all the parts that we make, it's not necessary at all. And this is already done, and I'd like to put a little bit of focus on this example here. Schubert, a great typical German company that make packaging machines, and what they decided to do is add to each packaging machines at the customer site a 3D printer. And what people can do that work around the packaging machine is that they can go to a central repository, I'd say, basically a website, and there they can order the parts that are either obsolete or broken or need repair. And then at that moment, the part flies through the air to the machine, and it's built the very same hour or perhaps 2 hours, and people can start using it again. As such, making sure that people that the loss of a standstill in packaging is prevented. This is also the way how now Schubert distributes new parts, so new grippers perhaps, or new parts within the machine that people can order as they need it and when they need it. I think a wonderful example of the promise of 3D printing. It's also the way how we were capable of helping COVID issues around the world. We didn't so much start sending around 3D printers. There are a lot of printers in the world, but what we did is create a central repository where people could download the digital parts and print them when they were needed, at the moment that they were needed. And in this case, for instance, in the Philippines, it was a wonderful example of how we could support by using the full promise of a digital supply chain enabled by 3D printing. What we do need to be aware of is that today, if you send through the air a digital part to have it 3D printed somewhere where it's actually needed, it's not the part itself. What it is in reality is a toolpath. It's a toolpath that's very specific. It's a toolpath that's meant to be used for specific materials and for specific machines. So one of the biggest challenges to really make this come true does not so much sit in the machines itself, but in all the capacity that's needed in order to make sure that people can use any material, any machine, any part in order to achieve this. I think that's my introduction to 3D printing.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll move on to Angeline Go, the Digital Manager, Supply Chain and 3D Printing Additive Manufacturing Lead at Shell.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to try to share my screen and then I'll take it from there. Let me know when you can see my screen sharing.
Yeah, I can see the screen.
Brilliant. Good. So thank you for this opportunity to share what we want to do in Shell. For us, this is a very unique time indeed, where we've seen that Shell, as one of the early adopters of the technology, has been able to also, during the COVID time, repurpose some of the machines to help with the production of medical equipment. So I think it's really showcased the versatility of the technology, and I'm happy today also to walk through what Shell would like to achieve with the use of this technology, our vision, and at the same time talk about what Shell today is already using the technology for, some of the challenges we face, as well as what we hope as end users and recipients of the technology, the products that this technology takes for us, what we would like to see going forward in the future. So very quickly, I think Shell has articulated for a long time that as a company, we would really like to progress power, to power the progress around the world together with more and cleaner energy. And we have three strategic aims, as you can see on the slide there. So one is to thrive in the energy transition. We want to be a world-class investment, but we also believe that we need to work to achieve a strong license to operate in the parts of the world where we have our operations. And we think that 3D printing is the technology that can help us. So what it does is to actually radically simplify our supply.
Sorry, Angeline.
Yes.
We can only see the cover slide. We're not seeing the specific slide at the moment.
Sorry. Let me stop the screen sharing again. Let me try it one more time. Are you able to see the slide now?
We can see it now. Thank you.
Maybe I'll keep it that way then, just to avoid any strange situation with the slides. So I was going through around the three ambitions from Shell. And so as I was saying, the 3D printing technology, we believe, is one that will help simplify our supply chain, particularly for spare parts. And I think we also see, as a company, we really want to shift towards the mentality that we used to have, which is buying to keep, just in case, towards let's strive for buying just in time. We also have the ambition to start to source locally for the spare parts, and to switch actually to not doing complete replacement where possible, but repair. Because this, we think, it's a more sustainable way of using natural resources. We hope that with the use of 3D printing, we actually have a credible way to lower the total cost of ownership in our operations. Through that, and I think through that, we also are aiming to achieve an increased production uptime availability. And this is enabled by the fact that the lead time to produce spare parts will be shorter, and we are able to produce this closer to our end user. And finally, we would like to work towards the ambition of lowering the carbon footprint in our organization. And we think this is possible through the fact that we would be reducing on the physical inventory and shifting towards buying just in time. So we reduce waste in the system. I thought it's useful to share where are the applications in which we're using 3D printing today in Shell. So there are three major areas. These are the focus area. So one, certainly in spare part printing, and I talk about some of the reasons why we think 3D printing is particularly helpful for us. What is also, so I won't repeat that, but what I think it's useful to point out is that in the use of 3D printing, we hope to increase the local content. So in other words, printing closer to the end user and using resources from the local community. We also use 3D printing for novel design. This is possible because we now, with this technology, can create impossible parts. We are particularly focused in trying to use 3D printing to solve some of the problems that are unique to us. And in the areas such that we can shift towards a modular design to integrated design, and in such a way reduce leakage risks, and that improves the safety also of our operations. We also think that there are parts that today we simply cannot achieve in terms of weight and flexibility, which the 3D printing with the combination of use of different material can help us in our industry. Finally, of course, I think that the quite common use case is in visualization. So we use it for rapid prototyping and to model some of the creations that we could use to facilitate training for our employees. Just a quick overview of some of the examples in Shell that we have already been doing over the last years. You'll see a large diversity of different parts. Quite common in the list here are pump impellers. That's quite a common use case, and it's also practical in the applications of our operations. Many of these requirements stem from the results of obsolete parts. And what we are seeing is that the obsolete equipment is a real situation with operations that we have that has been running for many decades. But in recent years, because of the turmoil, we do have an encounter as well obsolescence, even for new projects setups that is less than 1 or 2 years old. So a concern for us, and this 3D printing ensures ability to secure spare parts that we need to run our operations. You will also see in here that there are some demonstration projects. So they are not in operations, but these are demonstration projects that we do as part of our R&D to gain confidence about ability for parts that would perform in pressure environment and sour service environment. And this is just to gain an experience and to collect data to give us credibility about the use of these parts in the type of environment where our operations are in. What you do not see here is the diversity of the material that we have been experimenting on. So it spans from glass reinforced plastics, stainless steel, Inconel, as well as bronze. I think as an industry, we do have very unique challenges that presents a strong inertia towards adoption of a new technology. And in part because of a strong commitment that we have towards health and safety. And we have a strong engineering culture. That means that to do a change, we need to demonstrate that we can do it safely. This means we need a lot of data. And collecting data requires extensive testing and is therefore expensive. And in a volatile market that we have now, this presents a challenge. So with that, I move on also to the next slide, which is, I think a question we were asked initially is, as an industry, what would you like to see more in the future that can accelerate the use of additive manufacturing technology in our industry? And this is where I think it is important to look at the angle of collaboration across operators and vendors. I think it needs to start with a common desire that we want to use this technology more. It has benefits for us, and start to establish common goals towards how we would start to use this technology. It requires a lot of sharing of data to build trust for the credibility of these materials as well as 3D printed part being able to perform in the energy sector. And with that, we also realized that standardization of some of the norms, the design, but also how we would tackle and understand the flexibility in the intellectual property becomes quite important in creating that adoption. And I think with that, we see as well that technical assurance remain very important for us. And that is where I think the continuous research is needed. We still see that the speed of printing can be improved. That will also translate into ability to produce the part in a quicker time, more reliable time, and reduce also the associated costs this technology still poses today. There is a lot of unique circumstances that the energy sector face, again, with pressure, sour service, and which I think collectively as partners, we can certainly make bigger improvement and to make this much more accessible to the energy sector. I think with this, I hand over to you, Fabian.
Okay. Thank you very much, Angeline. And we now turn to Roberta Sampieri, Head of Global Additive Manufacturing Planning and Development at the Fiat Chrysler Automobiles Group.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I share my desktop. So can you see me?
Yes, we can see it. Okay,
so good morning again. It's a pleasure for me to be here to present the approach and the vision of FCA about additive manufacturing. So FCA, as you probably know, is a global car maker with 13 brands, more than 100 plants, and with more than 40 R&D centers. And within the R&D that we call product development, there is the Global Additive Manufacturing Department that I'm in charge of. We have actually three main facilities, three main additive centers. One is in Italy, one in North America, and the third one is in Brazil. The mission of this global team is to spread and increase the culture and the use of additive technologies in all FCA, making people aware of the high potential of them. And we are also to develop and maintain the competencies about the design for additive and keeping the pace with the quick evolution that we see in terms of new technologies, new materials, and applications. And this global team embraces different competencies from different fields. We need designers with an open mind and the right skills. We need material specialists, and of course, we need technology specialists. And all these things together will allow FCA to identify more and more opportunities for serial production and to bring a tangible innovation on our products. So if we analyze the whole value chain of a vehicle, we can identify 4 areas of interest where additive could bring many advantages. In R&D, as I said, we can have innovative solutions, lightweight structures, and a shorter time to market. Within manufacturing, for example, we can have rapid tooling to ease the assembly process. And in the logistic and after-sales areas, we could have a reduction of the working capital, a reduction of warehouses, or the possibility to customize our products, because we could imagine a production on demand scenario. And so we can also imagine to produce in the place where the parts are needed. So we believe that there are a lot of advantages in using the additive manufacturing in the automotive field, and we are exploring this possibility with cross-functional teams. But the journey of additive in FCA began in the first 90s with the first stereolithography when the aim was only to check the the dimensions of the parts or the aesthetic appearance. Moving on with the strong evolution in terms of additive technologies and related materials, in the first decade of this century, we started producing functional parts. So parts that could be tested by our engineers, helping them to shorten the time of development and on finding the best technical solution for our cars. Then, after many years and a lot of experience with polymer technologies, we approached it for the first time, the meta technology and the design for additive logic. It was really a big jump because in that moment, we began to change our mindset for designing parts. Only designing parts following the additive logic allow you to exploit really the high potential of these technologies. And so we developed our competencies at the beginning with the collaboration with universities, then by ourselves exploring many possibilities. So we identified some eligible parts following the process that you see in this slide, defining the business case, redesigning the part with an optimized geometry, making and validating it, of course. And once the solution is validated, we developed and optimized the production process, defining also the standards to qualify it. So as you've seen, the approach is a multidisciplinary approach where different competencies are needed because the advantages can be found in different areas. We can have reduction in the investment costs and weight. We'll have customization and optimization of the supply chain. But we didn't explore only the design for additive scenario. We explored also the possibility to have small serial productions for special vehicles. And this is the case for the special vehicles that we produce for our Italian government. In this application, the advantage is mainly the customization of some contents that we can realize according to the customer request. But talking about today, what is the real challenge we have to face? The challenge is to match, to link innovation and business. And to do that, we need for sure to bring innovation in our products, and this is the case, as I said, the design for additive, but at the right cost. And we need new materials and a higher productivity and reliability of additive equipment. We need automation, and finally standards. And I know that the ISO organization is working on that. But all these things are not enough. We need competence. This is the big challenge, I think, that we have to face, because competence that we need are needed because we need to be expert in designing and processes. And I believe, and this is my conclusion, that high schools, universities have to widen their educational offer in this way, because only with the right competencies and skills we can face and win the challenges I said before. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Christian Fracassi, CEO of Isinova. I think we still have Roberta's.
Yes, I cannot.
Hello?
Stop the...
Just one moment, I think we need to try to change the picture. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, Christian, please.
Hello. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So I think that to help the additive manufacturing be known all over the world, the best way, I think, is the school. You have to start from very young people, because I think that even if obviously all the people here in the call know very well the 3D printing, I think only a few of all the people in the world, about the 5% of them, know or have ever seen a 3D printer working, and can so understand the right potential that this 3D printing have. We also created, obviously, we became famous with only a single product, the Charlotte valve, a pieces used to connect a snorkeling mask to convert it into a respiratory one. And why so we became so famous? Only because probably this piece is the most printed all over the world. About 105,000 pieces produced by 3D printing. So obviously, when we know that you have a mass production, the 3D printer is not the best solution. In this case, if you have no time, and you have to have a sharing economy or a sharing distribution in all over the country, the 3D printing is the best way to make it happen. So this is probably the strange thing, that we created a product for mass production, but using 3D printer, and not doing all by ourselves, but asking all the people abroad to help us to switch on their 3D printer and print for hospital or for a patient that need this piece. So. A person asked me if I have a super for figure. I don't have any figure, but I only can show some pieces. We created two different projects. Three different projects. The first one is to replicate a common traditional piece, a Venturi valve, into another one that is very, very similar. So we rebuild the 3D, and we create the similar piece, the twin. And with about 8 hours, we create only 100 pieces for some hospital. But the biggest project, obviously, is this Charlotte one, that connected on the top of the mask can help you to breathe very well for COVID people affected. And the third project is to help a poor country in the world, like Mozambique, Uzbekistan, Burkina Faso, Rwanda, and all the African country to produce themselves a Charlotte valve, creating sort of a very small crowdfunding. We collected about 12,000 euro, and we bought some 3D printer, and we give for free from hospital, and we tell them how to use a 3D printer, because in that kind of country in Africa, they have never seen a 3D printer, or they know the technology, but they doesn't have. Also, never in the university. So we give them for free some 3D printer, and we help them try to understand how they work. So with a traditional call on WhatsApp, we told them how to print, how to change the filament, how to collect the pieces, and so on. Yeah, a question asked me how I could control the quality. Obviously, if you have hundreds or thousands of 3D printer all over the world, and you doesn't know the technology, and you doesn't know how they works or how they are, obviously you cannot control the quality of the pieces. But it's a very easy piece. It doesn't have a big pressure, it doesn't work with water, so it's very easy to create them. So you doesn't need a very high cost level or very precise technology. So about all the 3D printer on the world can produce this kind of piece. So this is probably the goal, the big thing, because the first product in this case have a very thin hole inside, about 0.6 millimeter. So in this case, we doesn't share the file, the 3D file on our website, because it's difficult to print. And if you does not control the right diameter of the hole, you can kill a person. So we does not share the file for this reason. In this case, with a diameter of about 12 or 14 millimeter, it's very easy to print it, and you doesn't need a very high level 3D printer. So the quality, if you have a 2 or 3 millimeter of thickness, it's indestructible.
Thanks, Christian. I think if we have the chance in the Q&A, we can come back to you on some of those. But I also want to give the last speaker in this company panel a chance to give her presentation. So we'll turn to Mayel Diaz, the CEO of Additive.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Hello, good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I would like to comment on how the industry can create a resilient supply chain with AM. So Additive is a Spanish company leading the digitalization of the industry, developing automated additive manufacturing technology. Our mission is to bring additive manufacturing to the production floor. So we really want to move additive manufacturing from prototyping to mass production. In order to do that, we have developed advanced robotics for mass production. We have already launched 2 different products. We are industrial machines manufacturer, and we launched in 2018 the AMEC, which is a fully automated machine, in order to really increase the productivity. For you to have a number in your heads, we are able to produce 8 tons of metals and 8 tons of polymer. And the most important thing is that we are able to have production unattended. On the other side, we launched by the end of last year also the AMEC 1400. This is for short batches in order for you to get into this technology. But in order to have really mass production, you need, first of all, to create your digital inventory. So we not only develop the hardware for you to create a resilient supply chain, but also the software that controls the whole manufacturing process. So we are able to digitalize all the different products that you need to produce, and also develop all the simulation and scheduling of the manufacturing orders. It's very important when you are transitioning from prototyping to mass manufacturing, also to control the quality, but also to have traceability of the whole production process. So in order to do that, you start working on your traceability of the different products you are manufacturing. So how do you digitalize the supply chain with AM? So you have to focus on three different and main and very important things. One is the machine, the other one is the factory, and the other one is the process. So for the machine, what we do is to monitor the status of the machine. Previously, another speaker commented on the importance on having the data and extracting the data from the machines. So it's very important in order to really push that data into the cloud and to really digitalize the manufacturing process. On the other side, we have the factory. So what we can do is to monitor the whole production line. So what we do is to use the real data that comes from your production line and also take that data into the MES, the manufacturing execution system. And finally, we talk about the process. In order to really increase your productivity with the additive manufacturing, and in order to really have a resilient supply chain, you need to know what is happening and how that product is being manufactured. So you need to get insights about the printing process, and also you need to analyze that data in order to improve and optimize those process parameters. So for the machine, what we have developed is that we are able to deliver that data of the machine real time to the operator. So this allows us to reduce also the failure, but also if there is any failure in the machines, you have a faster reaction time in order to solve those problems based on the machine alerts. It's very important to monitor what is happening in the entire value chain, since you have your digital product created until you have that final product created. That allows you also to have a higher reliability because of this full traceability of the system. But not only that, we are able also to optimize the productivity of the machines, because we are able to increase the utilization of those. On the other side, we were talking about the factory. So also you need to keep in mind that it's not only about the digital inventory, it's not only about knowing what is happening in the 3D printers, but it's also about how those machines are connected and how you can control the whole productivity in your factory. So what we do also is to connect the different printers you have in your facilities, integrate all of this into the digital inventory, and very important, and keep this word in your minds, distribute manufacturing, because this is going to be the future of additive manufacturing. This is going to be the future of manufacturing in general. To be able to produce near to your customers and in the right place, in order to reduce lead times, in order to reduce shipping and handling, etc. But also this allows us to empower the local manufacturing and scale productivity. So what you will be able to have is seamlessly integrated automated manufacturing process in your facilities, and to be able to collect all that data, because at the moment the current manufacturing technologies it's very complicated to extract that data, and also very expensive. Finally, for the process, it's very important that when you are moving from prototyping to mass production, you are able to still ensure the quality of the parts you are producing. So in order to do that, you need to measure what is happening inside the machine, and to get all of those insights in order to reduce the failure. But also, very important, and this is one of the things we are working a lot, is in improving the automation of the whole systems, in order to have the system working 24/7, in order also to increase the productivity and reliability. So how additive manufacturing industry has ensured fast and flexible production during the crisis? You know, there are three different advantages from using additive manufacturing in the production of your products. One is, and we all know, is the freedom of design. So additive manufacturing can produce almost any geometry and any quantity. Also, with some limitations, industrials have to know about their specific products. On the other side, we have the customization. because at the end, if we are able to produce any quantity, any product, we are able to really deliver to our customers personalized products. And finally, decentralized production, the word that comes again. For decentralized production, you also need to produce in the right place, reduce your cost of production, and finally, reduce the lead times for manufacturing those products. But in order to do that, you first need to have the digital inventory of parts. So you can be ready when you really need to produce those parts. You first of all need all the necessary information, like what's the material you are going to use, what are the quantities, what are the requirements of that part, etc. So at the end, if you have and you gather all of this data, you will be able to facilitate the production with additive manufacturing. So finally, how different sectors in Europe can benefit from the combination of digital supply chain and additive manufacturing. I have been repeating three main advantages during the presentation. One is cost savings. AEM has demonstrated that it's able to reduce up to 70% of the cost, but also keep in mind, we have been all capable to demonstrate that with our systems, we are reducing up to 10x, not only in a percentage, but 10x the cost of parts production. Also, on the other side, one of the advantages of adopting AEM is reducing the lead times. So AEM can reduce up to 70% the lead times to produce your products. And finally, very important to have the similar quality that you have been having with traditional manufacturing technologies. COVID at the end has disrupted the whole supply chain all over the world, and all the production lines were halted, all the budgets in the industry were cut. So also we need to have a technology that allows us to reduce those costs, keep Europe as a competitive industry, but also in the future be able to decentralize production. Finally, those are some of the pictures of customers who we are helping to create a resilient supply chain and to also have their factories up and running during the COVID crisis, and also reduce the lead times and reduce the cost of mass manufacturing printed parts for the factories. So one of the important things in order to really ensure that you will have a resilient supply chain is having different sources of manufacturing, adopting additive manufacturing as a key technology to give you flexibility and versatility. Finally, I would like to comment we were also able to move or to adapt our platform to be a platform for online repository for the COVID crisis, where companies and particulars were able to request different kind of products, but also other manufacturers could upload their production capacities. So we were working a lot on distributed manufacturing with 3D printing. So this is an example of what additive manufacturing can do for you in order to give you flexibility to move to new markets, or in order to help your company to be more competitive. And finally, as our vision is to move from prototyping to mass production, you also have to keep in mind that automation becomes crucial when you want to transition from prototyping to mass manufacturing. That's the reason why we develop automated industrial additive manufacturing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We are actually quite short of time now. It's getting towards the end of the seminar. But I wanted to also have a chance to have these questions addressed. So I will take all of those questions and then go back to the company panelists. But I will ask you to keep your answer strictly to a minute only, and just pick one of the questions rather than trying to answer all of them. So we've had questions on the interaction with machine learning and AI and robotics, and what capacity of AI is needed to produce the improvement on the autonomy of the robotics production. We had a question around intellectual property and how intellectual property can be protected when a file is being transferred for remote printing without the file being captured like a blueprint. And the final question we had is whether decentralized production is really a reality, or is it centralized production taking place only in those manufacturers who can afford industrial additive manufacturing systems? So if you can just pick one of those and give a 1-minute answer, that would be much appreciated. And I'll just go in the same order as we had in the agenda. So Stuart, the speed conferencing starts here.
Okay, I'll just turn the conference on, just turn my microphone on. Can I take the question on decentralized manufacturing?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
To be very brief, yes, fair point. Is decentralized manufacturing happening? It's certainly, in our opinion, starting. It's one direction that the industry is going. I think that through the crisis, we saw an acceleration of that with respect to the presentations we've seen today on some medical applications. It's clear it's got a long, long way to go. We're not talking necessarily about the technologies of the next 1, 2, maybe even 3 years. We're talking ahead into the future. But we are certainly seeing through our membership more and more organizations that are looking to pursue this.
Thank you. Paul?
Yes, I think decentralized manufacturing is happening, but it's focusing particularly on either prototyping, which is very much local manufacturing, or is focusing on spare parts and obsolete parts. I think most of the people here said that. And I think a very important move forward would be the repair directive, that people are actually entitled to replace obsolete parts or spare parts instead of being dependent on the manufacturing of the tool where the repair needs to take place. If that would happen, I think that would make a very big difference.
Thank you very much. Angeline?
So I do think that decentralized production is indeed interesting, and this has been a driver to move more and more towards the direction. I think cost is still a very important factor for at least the end user in the energy sector as well, in the decision making. What is also important is that the supply chain that we as energy industry faces is that 40 to 80% of our products or the spare parts that come into our use are for production and safety critical equipment. Therefore, the quality becomes very, very important, and that requires attention. So the decentralizing needs to take into consideration as well the quality that we can assure in these locations where it's produced. So more work to be done in this area still.
Okay. Roberta.
Yes, about the decentralized production, I agree with Angeline, because also for the automotive sector, when we need to produce a part, we need that this part is qualified. So we need the quality aspect is very, very important for us. And also the qualification of the process, of the production process is important. So it is not easy to now actually to decentralize the production for the automotive sector, I think, but I think it would be possible in the near future, and I hope this will be possible because the suppliers of equipment, so the printers supplier, are working hard on the quality aspects of the machines, of the process, and so I think it will be possible.
Thank you. Christian.
Yeah. Also, like Roberta and all the other, I think that the decentralization is possible. In my case, with my small experience in abroad, it was the key to have success of my project, because we were in lockdown and we cannot print here and send to Brazil or Philippines or Korea or all other country. We can only share the 3D file. So sharing the file, we can print everywhere in 0 time. So decentralization was, in my case, the only way to have a mass production.
Thanks very much. And Maya?
Yeah, so at industry level, and as Stewart commented before, it's not a reality yet, but I think the industry is looking forward to really in the future, in the near future, have decentralized production. But as I commented also during the presentation, the first step is to have your digital inventory, or at least to know what products in your line you will be able to produce with additive manufacturing, what are the requirements, what are the needs you have for those products, and in the future be able to really send production to all the different machines, to the different factories you have all over the world to produce near your customer. But the first step is to know what you need to produce.
Thank you very much to all the panelists. Also, thank you to the MEPs again to introduce us with a policy debate. Unfortunately, we are already over time. I think there were many issues which we could have gone into more detail. Certainly one thing I do take away from this, working at the EU policy level, it is very useful to hear the company perspective, to hear what is important at the level of actually delivering this. I think just to highlight one point, and there were many points I could have highlighted, but the importance of standardization really comes through. And that is something which certainly also from an EPC perspective, we have worked a lot on, that this is actually, if you like, a European superpower. This is something where we have a global influence, not just a European one. So it's very important that we don't treat that as something technical which happens in the background, but that we are aware of the importance and of also the market power which comes with standardization. So that was just one little takeaway, but as I said, there were many interesting points, and I very much appreciated all the interventions. So thank you for that. Thank you also to Sesimo for putting this together, for organizing that, and for asking me to moderate today's session. And I'll hand over for a few closing remarks to Philip Gertz from Sesimo. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Fabian. Hello, everybody. Now, taking into account the time, I'm going to be extremely brief now. But first, let me take the opportunity to thank the moderator and all the speakers from both sessions for participating in the 6th edition of the Additive Manufacturing European Conference. As Europe plans the recovery of its society and economy, industries are looking to get back on track and to strengthen those areas of their supply chain which have been hit by this pandemic. Today, we have heard that policymakers consider additive manufacturing as a good solution to support the European Union industrial competitiveness and transition towards digital and green manufacturing. We also had the opportunity to see some great examples of what additive manufacturing can provide to those sectors that wishes to strengthen its supply chain and bring manufacturing back to Europe. New and innovative applications of additive manufacturing are constantly being developed. It is now clear that additive manufacturing has moved far beyond its original prototyping applications and that it plays now a much bigger role in companies' line of production. The question is, how far are we from considering additive manufacturing a viable solution to bridge gaps in any company supply chain? Now at Sesimo, we believe that additive manufacturing has an important role to play in increasing the competitiveness of European industry and in supporting circular economic models. Therefore, we will continue to offer a platform to discuss the regulatory and market barriers. And we will continue to promote the development related to this technology. The industry is playing its part. Now, to capitalize on the opportunities provided by the sector, it will be essential to ensure an appropriate legal and policy framework, the development of dedicated standards, the promotion of skills in this area, and the provision of financial support to those industries that wish to implement changes in their supply chain. And with this, I officially close the 6th edition of the Additive Manufacturing European Conference. Thank you all for joining us.